would like to welcome all of you today. Thank you for taking time out of your days to come and listen to this presentation. We're going to dive in a little bit into the indie and mid-tier games market, which is an amazing piece of the business. And hopefully there's a few thoughts that come out of this that can help you. The intent of this presentation is really to provide kind of a more of a higher level strategic overview, some trends, maybe get you thinking about some things you hadn't been thinking about for your business, and give you some takeaways that you can really lean into afterwards to help you. So I'm Chris Hewish, president at Xsolla. I've been in the industry for, I kind of lost count, 30 years now or more, on all sides of the business, a developer, producer, publishing, go-to-market, ran some studios. So a lot of different roles, both on indie titles, mid-tier, and AAA, so all across the board. And I'm with Xsolla now. As many of you know, we are a commerce company that helps game developers and game companies with all the things they need to run the businesses around their games. And here we go with the clicker. So, I think what we want to do is jump right in and kind of talk about the global games market. And, this is a market where gaming is bigger than ever, but a lot of people are wondering, how do I succeed? How do I claim my piece of this big industry that continues to grow, is truly global, is seeing success on all of these new platforms and technologies? And, at the same time, there are all of these just conflicting messages out there. We hear that the industry is fragmented and crowded, and you have Steam, which is just more crowded than ever, and the app stores are just overflowing with games and apps. Yet at the same time, gaming is everywhere, right? Everywhere you look, people are playing games. It's crowded, but it's everywhere. There's all sorts of challenges that we hear about in regards to getting your game discovered, connecting with your audience, right? Trying to succeed as a business. But at the same time, we hear about all these great opportunities. There's games that are succeeding all the time, and we hear that it's an industry that continues to grow and more people are playing, and discovery, is offset by community. So all of these confusing messages that make it really difficult to navigate the business of games, especially when you're kind of doing it on a smaller scale as a solo developer or a small group of developers. We have a developer here who's launching a game today, and they're going to navigate a lot of these challenges. Void Breaker, so out in early access on Steam, so definitely encourage you to check that out. That's the danger of coming early and talking with me, right? And we also have a few students here who are learning about the business of games. I'm not going to leave you guys out. So. All right, so yes, this is kind of the problem space we're facing. Like, how do we navigate all of this? And I'm not going to say I have all of the answers, but again, hopefully I spark some thoughts that help you navigate it. But first, why don't we take a look at where are we right in 2025? And I kind of take that by looking at the different platforms that we're on. And I break these down into 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of 5 main areas. PC digital stores, things like Steam, right? There's multiple storefronts out there, but we know that they are crowded and they kind of seem to favor the core a little, quite a bit, and it can be tough to get discovered. And discovery really depends a lot on the curators or streamers or festivals, events that are being run outside of your control on the stores. But it's always good to really keep in touch with what is happening, because a lot of the successful storefronts are operating kind of their own live ops model. And and you want to be part of that. Mobile. We all know what's going on with mobile. It's dominated by giant games, big games out there, but there's free-to-play games. But there is a growing niche for premium games, whether it's through services like Apple Arcade or Netflix, or more excitingly for us, what we're starting to see coming out through regulations like the Digital Markets Act or different legal challenges that have happened in the States. We're starting to see the ability to sideload or have alternative app stores. These, I think, are going to be really good opportunities for indie and mid-tier games to really get out there and find a way to compete in this market that's really dominated by a lot of big free-to-play players. Browser games, let's not forget browser games. This is a steady, strong market. We see that ourselves at Xsolla. The company actually began by helping out a lot of browser games and working with these games, and they continue to do really, really well. And they are a great way to help solve some of the discovery and some of the community challenges that you might find, and a good way to get early traction, although monetization can still be limited. Direct to consumer, this is really our big thing that we talk about a lot, and personally I have been advocating about direct to consumer for quite a while, where we really are accelerating into an age where direct to consumer is a very viable model for companies and businesses. I'm not saying at the exclusion of platforms, but think of direct to consumer as it's not a binary, I'm on Steam or I'm on the App Store or I'm going direct. It really is a way to expand your business, and either doing that before you launch on a platform, same time, after. There's all kinds of benefits. I think everyone knows about the margin piece of it. The thing that I like to share a lot that people often overlook about going direct to consumer is the fact that you actually get all of the data for your players. A lot of data is obfuscated or lost if you're going through a third-party platform. If you have a direct relationship, you can start to get a better picture of your players, develop stronger relationships with them. This isn't just about, it's always about monetization, but it's not just about monetization. It's being able to understand who these players are, where they are, what they're engaging with across the full data spectrum, not just in the game itself. And then finally, consoles. I almost pulled consoles off of here because there's such a kind of still a closed ecosystem. But what I'm talking about here is the digital stores on consoles. And there is opportunity there, especially for mid-tier games. It's a little harder for indies to get in there. Discovery is still really, really tough. But there are opportunities on that. So moving on to talking a little bit about what the market looks like. There's all kinds of estimates out there, but let's say approximately 200 billion or north of 200 billion in 2025. This is across all of those platforms, also accounting for other things like virtual reality and AR and others, with strong growth over the next 4 years, approaching almost 300 to 265 or a little bit over. So these are really big numbers, and it just shows that the market is still growing, even though you may hear a lot of different things out there, particularly in regards to mobile. There's a narrative that, mobile is kind of flat or it's just growing at a very slow pace. What that is born from is the fact that a lot of the mobile business has actually moved to direct to consumer, which is not being tracked. So a lot of your typical analytics firms are kind of projecting slower growth than what we're actually seeing. Global market segments. So this is one that I thought might be interesting, just to show relatively how these different markets look. Obviously, you have your big AAA kind of the global games industry down below. Mid-tier, we're seeing in this year, it should come in about 42 billion with a strong CAGR growth. That's the growth rate year over year of 8 to 10%. And then indie, even though that's a small sliver up there, not to be discouraged, the growth rate is actually extremely strong, 14.5% year over year, representing a very strong market. And we think there's a lot of great opportunity for indie developers and indie games out there, especially with all of the tools that are there now for indie developers to be able to really just run a big business, but focus on making a great game and letting other people take care of the commerce and the business part of it and the direct-to-consumer part. Regional growth signals. So this is one where I'm sharing this to kind of just highlight where a lot of this growth is happening. Now, one thing that I did not do here was overlay where the revenue is relative to the growth, because that would give a slightly different picture. And what I mean by that is if you have Europe and North America, which are in pretty stable growth states, there's not a whole lot of new growth happening there, but they do represent the majority of the revenue, at least in the Western market. And then you have the real strong growth. The fastest growth is happening in Asia Pacific, primarily, again, through mobile is a very fast growing area there, but you are also seeing PC having some success. And then Latin America and China China's a little tough to always get a good read on because so much of that is gray market and unknown. But we all know of the hit games like Black Myth Wukong and stuff like that. So just a little comparative of where the action is all happening. Okay, so when it comes to monetization, what are the trends? What are we seeing here with this? So free-to-play obviously is the dominant model. Over half of the market, anywhere from 50 to 60%. It's still the biggest piece, especially in mobile and live service PC and console games. And this business, I think, as most of us know, is driven by whales and the power of live ops. And you have a business where the top 5 to 10% of players account for the majority of the spend. And it's really important to know that this is a market that really has become saturated. Over the past probably 5, 6 years or maybe 10 years, so many people have focused on free-to-play that it has become pretty saturated, and we have players that are getting kind of burned out. Either they're getting entrenched into games that they're not leaving, or they're getting fatigue on free-to-play, and that has created a real opportunity for premium, which is where a lot of, I think, the indie and the mid-tier games are living. And this is driven by games that are either having a price up front, a hybrid model with they're either free with additional DLC content, or a low cost up front with DLC, or low cost with subscriptions or seasonal passes or whatever it might be. A real various hybrid monetization models. And this has really been driven by the growth of AA games across PC primarily, but also console. And we are seeing that players are really willing to pay up front for a good experience. There's some genre advantages here with narrative-driven titles, Metroidvanias, strategy games. They all seem to be doing really well. And, we see some tactics like bundling up, if you're able to bundle up multiple games if you have them, or multiple offers around your one game that time with digital festivals and storefronts, having a curated storefront going direct to consumer. There's a lot of different tactics that are helpful in this space, and we actually see this as a pretty strong growth area, especially in the trend of going direct to consumer, because you can really lean into a lot of hybrid monetization. You can lean into monetizing based on different audience segments, different offers, and do that in a way that aligns with the resources that you have, if we're not talking about a ridiculously large AAA team. Then we also have advertising and subscriptions. So advertising, that continues to do well. Just look at AppLovin and their earnings and their announcement the other day. They're just on fire. But this market is growing. It is being driven a lot by emerging markets, where we are seeing some good momentum in ad-supported mobile and browser titles in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Middle East, North Africa. And this is because a lot of these places, the disposable income is a little bit lower, so it makes it tough to do a true free-to-play. It makes it tough to do premium, but ad-supported has become attractive, especially in these emerging markets, which is really interesting to consider. So what I'm going to do is pause on that note and come back to one of the concepts that I really want to put out there for you to think about is when you're looking at the business of your game and how you're pricing it, what your monetization strategies and tactics are, it really is not a one-size-fits-all, right? It's not, hey, I'm going to put it on Steam, I'm going to charge $29.99, $19.99, whatever, and maybe I'll adjust the price based on a region, to reflect what the income is there, what the region can bear. That you could do that, but that's missing out a lot. I think if you really start to understand what is working in different regions and what is not, and adjusting your models even further, introducing ad-supported, offers in regions where people maybe aren't going to pay for a premium title as much, or doing hybrid approaches, just really balancing out how you're doing your monetization based on the region and the audience, and really getting in, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, the hybrid monetization approach. We really think that is something that is valuable, and it's going to gain more traction going forward, especially as you go in with direct to consumer. Gosh, the time is flying. I'm getting the 5-minute mark here, so I'm going to sort of go through a few things here quickly. And we can put these slides up, I think, after for people if you want to get them and get a little bit more information. But these are just the different models, the challenges that are faced, some of the ways that people are, mitigating that risk through boosts. So this is where value lands for consumers. I think we all know this, that the willingness to pay versus the perceived value is correlates fairly well. Okay, younger audiences. So this is another thing to think about, where younger audiences really are driving some changes in how the kind of games they play, the way they engage with them, the way they monetize with them. Gen Alpha, Gen Z, nearly all of them play games. Massive, massive audiences. But they approach games for different reasons. Social is a big component, self-expression. You're seeing some spend in trusted ecosystems, which is almost the equivalent of old school brand loyalty coming back, which may be a result of just there's so much choice out there. So pay attention to these generations and understand how they engage, and then again, do a hybrid approach so that you can appeal to them properly. So these are just some of the challenges ahead. Player behavior shifts. It's harder to retain, harder to get people's attention. It's getting complex to do your monetization. Lots of regulatory challenges. We see that now with the UK Online Privacy Act, all of those different things. But that's okay. These are all things that can be mitigated. Direct to consumer, we're seeing a big upward trend on that, not just in mobile, but on PC. Alternative payments, this is something definitely want to reinforce. There are so many different payment options out there in the world, and a lot of the digital storefronts only use a fraction of them. 51% of gamers globally use alternative payments, something other than a credit card or PayPal. Meanwhile, a lot of storefronts have a very limited number of those. We have over 1,000 different payment methods integrated into our API, and there are more out there. So if you're not thinking about using alternative payments to reach a larger audience, you're leaving a lot of people globally sort of out of the mix that cannot actually engage with your game. In emerging markets, we see in Latin America, 77% of players under the age of 20 don't own credit cards. They're using alternative payments, local payments, digital sort of digital wallets, e-wallets are picking up a lot of steam, even here in Europe and the US. In North America, digital wallets are gaining ground. They're at about a 30% market share now, so that's another thing to be thinking about. And then I'll try to wrap this up quickly. Going direct to consumer, we do see a strong lift in the average revenue per paying user because you're able to leverage that data that you have. You're able to deploy the full power of e-commerce. You're able to do live ops, right, with your monetization, events, special offers, bundles, return offers, all of these things that are difficult to do on a platform, you can do if you're going direct yourself, and you can make it part of your whole monetization ecosystem. And then we have the road ahead. So I know we probably have like 1 minute left, right? Or am I over? All right, so the road ahead, it is about hybrid. It is about, looking at how do you grow your revenue through genre-specific strategies and diversification. Really making sure that you have diversified ways to monetize your players and that you're reaching all of those players wherever they are. And that was probably one of the most quick walkthrough presentations I've ever done. I appreciate all of you. I think we are now needing to wrap it up. So thank you, everybody. I do appreciate your time, and have a great rest of the show.